the schools, the libraries, but the rec centers perhaps. But for me, that's really the businesses that employ people, that provide services, experiences, products to the community. And I'm coming at it as a small business owner. A shutdown of our business for 6 weeks is not sustainable. And my efforts have been to do what I keep doing, is keeping our businesses alive. And my commitment to keeping our business alive by actually going to takeout, taking out food from restaurants, going to the local restaurants, and also I want to connect with our community development manager in the city of Wilmette to see what they are doing, and also to our village trustees and what they're doing to keep our businesses alive. This is under the state government mandate to keep businesses closed, enforce social distances. I feel that maybe this house of cards is going to collapse, and that the cure may be worse than the disease. And we need to take into account the economic impact of when balancing it out with overloading our health system. So I understand the focus on containment, the focus on keeping everybody healthy, but we need to go back to normalcy, and I want to advocate for that. And I'd love to hear your thoughts in this day 4 of the social distancing. So what I'd like to do is actually turn it over to talk about to Barbara Stewart. Another foundation of our community is volunteering. And as women, we really, sometimes we take for granted all the volunteering that we do in our schools, in our churches, in our community, with our neighbors. And Barbara, who's actually from Chicago, is the CEO of the Corporation for National Community Service, which is a federal agency that runs AmeriCorps and Vista AmeriCorps. And Barbara and I were talking yesterday about the impact of this social distancing on volunteerism in America. So Barbara, I'd love to turn it over to you. I'm turning the floor, and when you speak, you're going to come into the center here for everyone to see you. Hi, Barbara.
Hi, Sylvie. Thanks so much. Am I doing this right? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for including me in this discussion today. It's great to see so many people interested in this topic at this critical time. As Sylvie mentioned, I lead the Federal Agency for Service and Volunteering. And so we're grappling with, how do people volunteer? How do they help others in their community at this time where we have all the social distancing requirements going on? So I'm very interested in hearing thoughts or suggestions that you all have. There's a lot of really wonderful, very informal community assistance that's occurring really throughout the country, where people are volunteering to help their friend or their neighbor, or the elderly person that lives in their community to get food, or to even have electronic interaction for elderly people who are lonely. So I'm very interested in hearing the thoughts that you all have in terms of how do we continue to support the vulnerable and the needy in our various communities while not necessarily having the kind of physical interaction that many have grown to rely on. The area of food insecurity is of particular concern, because while we're trying to combat the coronavirus by distancing ourselves from one another, it used to be many countries and in our are suffering from food insecurity. And I'm not sure what the appropriate way to wrap up is, Sylvie. I apologize.
Well, yeah, no, thank you. Well, I think thank you for sharing. And what I'd like to do now is actually, so thank you for sharing the concerns. And I want to turn it over to our participants to share what they are doing and how they view volunteerism in these conditions. So the first one is going to be Molly Irvin. So Molly is a circle leader here in Wilmette. She leads the Lincoln Circle, and I know Molly very well. And I know that she is always the first one to help her neighbors in ways that, even you could not imagine. So Molly, I'd like to turn it over to you to share, some of the things that your neighbors have been doing and you've been leading to keep people connected. And I'm going to share, and I know that Molly went around the neighborhood and took some pictures, and I'm going to share my screen while Molly is talking and show some of the pictures to illustrate Molly's remark. Molly, do you want to take the Zoom?
Sylvie, thank you so much. Many of you know me on this call, and what you're going to see is some shots of downtown Wilmette, some that speak to kind of what we're doing from a business perspective, which I think is wonderful to try and keep people afloat, and others as a sense to build community. So when I think about what I value in my community and why I choose to live where I do, it's not only the vibrant downtown that Sylvie talked about, but the fact that I chose a walking community where people still talk to their neighbors, they still host block parties, they organize holiday luminaries, and it's common to see kids on the block playing ghosts in the graveyard still on a summer night. And I personally work remotely from home, so this virtual community that we've all started to participate in is not a new phenomenon for me. As a result, it's become my habit to walk my dog every day in the morning during drop off for school so that I can get a little bit of human interaction. Every morning I talk to the crossing guard, I stop and I catch up with neighbors. In fact, recently I just, with another policy circle member, started to walk a 6-year-old to school whose widowed father needs to get to work as early as possible. And I personally have enjoyed the increased sense of community that I received by taking that volunteer position on my block. It's a way that I feel connected to people outside of my immediate network, is by walking the block and talking to people and getting outside of my bubble. And this is me. I'll tell this story. That's why I immediately felt something missing in my life when social distancing started. And it's that the breadth of my network shrunk. People were out in the neighborhood. I look out my window and I see still people riding bikes, going on walks, but nobody was talking to each other. That 6 to 10 foot bubble was very obvious visually. And I was out on the block and started talking to a friend of mine, Tracy, who you see in this picture. And we were talking across the street and realized that because there were no cars on the street, it was really easy to hear each other. And so we decided that every day at 4 o'clock, we would drag our lawn chairs out to the corner and we would start talking. And what we saw was that people would see us out the window and they would drag their lawn chair out to the corner as well. And our little group has expanded now to about 5 or 6 people. And the reason why I like this is not only am I getting that face-to-face interaction, which I think is so important, but I started to get back that kind of impromptu conversations that would happen. We ran into and we've seen this, now I'm seeing it on social media. So you're going to see pictures of other people doing the same thing. I ran into 2 ER doctors that were walking to the grocery store who stopped and told me what it was like at the hospital. I ran into somebody who told me there was an elderly person on my block who was very nervous and scared. And so in addition to doing this, I went back to my Christmas luminary email list and sent out a message to everyone on my block just so everybody could connect. And we have 2 elderly people on our block now who have asked us that every time we go to the grocery store, we email people first and say, is there anything I can grab you? So I feel that these kind of things that people can do are just so important to keep people safe and still keep people connected. I was watching the news this morning and I heard a quote that Dr. Fauci had said. He said, social distancing does not need to be social disengagement. And that really resonated with me. For me, the fabric of neighborhoods is about made from the people and the sense of connectedness that will be strained during social distancing, but it can also grow in unexpected ways. I know that people can make new friends in this situation, and I'm interested in hearing from everyone what you're seeing in your neighborhoods that can strengthen community and provide a sense of normalcy about our interactions with each other. That's going to be key to our rebounding from this situation. So that's my story.
Well, thank you for sharing, Molly. And I'd like to invite everyone, to click on that raise your hand button. And what I'll do is I can see on my screen, the little hand icon, and I can unmute you. So so we have about 30 minutes and 20 minutes. So I'd love for you guys to raise your hand to share, and I'll unmute and you'll come in the center. So, well, Barbara, would you like to share a reaction to what Molly just said, or no?
Well, I loved it. I can you hear me?
Yeah.
Super. I loved it. I mean, I thought she did a great job of outlining both the challenges as well as the opportunities, the kind of creative thinking about helping your neighbor in informal ways. But also, I loved the creativity of going out on her street and creating community with people that she knows, and how that broadened into people that she didn't know as well. So I love the creativity, and I love both looking out for your own mental health, continuing sense of community, but also caring about others and asking them if they need something. And so it's a reinforcement that good things are going on close to home.
Great. I'd like to invite Lori to speak. Lori, I'm unmuting you, and you're on.
Well, again, I also appreciated the creativity. What I found is just people stepping up to do things that it kind of makes me think we should be doing these all the time. But so far this week, I've delivered a case of Dr. Pepper to a nursing home, a case of toilet paper to a like a senior living center, just for people who reached out to maybe other family members who weren't able to fulfill that need. And a guy from my church is shopping for anyone who needs anything. And we haven't gotten as creative as the virtual or whatever it is, the dads out in the social distancing beer. But I think I'm seeing things about, while you're home for a couple of weeks, consider fostering an animal. My school teaching daughter has preschool, so they weren't doing as much e-learning. They prepared activity packs for the kids to take home, but she's babysitting for some of her students whose parents actually are in the medical field and have to work more this week. So I've got just some interesting approaches I'm seeing to what people are doing. And I think what's really great is it forces us, one, to think about other people in a way that, I think all of us probably do stuff if people ask us to, but to think and make an offer that someone might not ask. I've actually shopped for a few people this week because I think they shouldn't be out, not because they've said, please shop for me. But I also think it makes us step out of our box and be a little creative. What does so-and-so need? Or how can I help so-and-so? And sometimes it's not the asking, what can I, it's like when there's a funeral, you say to somebody, what can I do for you? And they're like, I'm okay, thanks. You need to think outside of the box and say, what would be helpful for them, and offer it. And it's amazing how many times you get a yes.
Yeah, and that's the whole idea also of this call, is for people to share their creative ways. So thanks for sharing about fostering animals and offering babysitting. So I'd like to invite Darlene Sanger to speak. I will unmute you, Darlene, you're on.
Oh, good. Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, good. A couple things I'd just like to share. And the first one has to do with, and I mentioned this before, I think, Sylvie, is that my sister and I are helping take care of my elderly parents. They're still living in their home in Hammond. And my sister's also taking care of her mother-in-law, who has just moved to hospice. And one of the difficulties I found is that my parents are the age in school where they do not have internet access or cable TV. So they're very isolated and they're very scared. They're at the point where they're afraid to go out of the home. And I keep saying you need to get fresh air and the like, but there's a lot of individuals in our state that don't have access to social media and internet and email and the rest. So, we need to be considerate of that. The other point I'd like to make, and this was after reading the brief made me start thinking, is my neighbor next door. She works for a gym and she just got laid off. Actually, she's without a job now. And reading the brief, given I'm a former city councilman out of Naperville, I started thinking about zoning and how we do connect in a normal environment. And it made me start thinking is that it's too bad, particularly like for my neighbor, where she could probably start her own business, that we can't have more flexibility in regards to working out of our homes. There's a lot of zoning restrictions in what you can and can't do out of your home, and given we're all in our houses right now, there's some creative ways we can come up with going forward to say that let's get some more flexibility for small businesses. There's a lot of restrictions and it makes it difficult. And I hope, our conversations start leading into, what's really healthy for communities, particularly when it comes to the policies that are being made on the local level to keep us healthy.
Well, thank you. Thanks for sharing. Thanks for sharing, Darlene. It's true that, that's what's happening though. People are experiencing virtual, working remotely and making it work. So I think it's going to really have a real change on work environments and what can be done. So Lorna, I'll invite you to speak. Lorna McMahon, I'm unmuting you, Lorna.
Hi, everyone. So one of the big things our neighborhood has been doing too is we're using both the Nextdoor app and Facebook to reach out to each other, has been one of the ways we've really been using it. And then our big concern is all the local restaurants. That's been a very big thing. So for instance, the other day, my kids used to work at a restaurant. All three of them were hosts at the restaurant. And we catered food. And when we reached out to them, they said, what day do you need it? And we said, when do you want us to get the food? So we got huge portions of Italian food to help the business and to help us. And then while I was in there, a bunch of my high school friends were all talking, and we're trying to buy gift certificates to restaurants because and I asked them flat out, if I buy it now, does it help you now? Or is it something that won't really help till you cash it in? And they said, no, it helps us now. So that's another really easy way that you can help out your neighborhood, is go buy those gift certificates to restaurants and things like that you can use later. So that was a big thing that we've been working on here in our town.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Lorna, for sharing. So I'd like to remind everyone, if you want to click on that raise hand button, I can see you, when you click on it, I can see you and I can unmute you. So Kim Borchers, I will unmute you. Here we go. Oops. It's working. Judy, can you unmute? Oh, here we go. It worked. So Kim, you're on.
Awesome. So one of the things that we're doing, I'm a party leader here in our county. And so what we have targeted is all of our precinct committee persons. I asked first of all for a handful of volunteers, and there's about 10 of us that will go through our list of precinct committee people to just make personal phone calls. Like one of you mentioned, a lot of people won't reach out for help. So I think what we wanted to let them know is that we don't just care about them during election cycles, we care about them in time of crisis. So we're starting really a calling tree next Monday. So folks will take a batch of 20 people, and that will be the folks that they will check on during this particular situation with the COVID-19. And so it's allowing them to get to know people who they didn't know before. And it just allows us to maintain some touch and to see if there's some needs that might go unrecognized. So that's one of the things we're doing here in Shawnee County.
Yeah, I think this is one of the good times to kind of use these calling trees that we've had. We have the same on Laurel Street to check in on people and offer help. So thanks for sharing, Kim. So I will lower your hand, and I will invite Stacy Mighty to speak. Hi, Stacy.
Hi there. Thanks so much for organizing this. It's nice to see and connect with people also in the same environment. I almost find myself that this has been just almost an impossible balancing act this week, as I have 4 kids who are all now at school in my house with me as their teacher. I'm also a new business owner, and all week long my conversations have been with my clients who are making, instant horrible decisions about letting their employees go, and what are those ramifications, how do you do it? And just devastating, and exhausting all day long as you're really seeing, what this impact is. And I just kind of say, okay, well, one day at a time, try not to get too bogged down in what that news story is today, because it keeps changing. And for us personally, I'm like, well, we need to find ways to find joy, and not having that connectedness and social outlet. And like, well, we got it. Like you said, we need to be creative. And so for me and our family, like, I'm so grateful next week is spring break, so we don't have to have that juggle right now until, like, let us catch our breath and figure out how to do it going forward. But we are going to just treasure this time together, not trying to like be so fearful, by thinking about what to do, because I'm like, we need to get outside. Like, being inside is driving us all nuts. We've got way too many of us in this house. So one thing that we really enjoyed last summer was planting a garden. And I think, well, wow, what about like all of these events that are getting canceled, all of these block parties, all these graduation parties, God forbid, if we were to like work on our own gardens right now while we're here and stuck in our own homes, whether it's herb gardens or vegetable gardens, we can then like perhaps have community gatherings and block parties with our garden produce. So one thing I think the kids and I are going to do this weekend, where our local hardware store is still open. Thankfully, we can go gather a bunch of seeds, and we're going to pass them out to our neighbors, and also encourage us all to try to do a little bit in our alleys, to try to clean up our alleyways. And I know we have some space along our alley, but by our gardens, instead of just having some, I don't even know what type of, it's green. It might be a weed. It might be a plant. I'm not really sure, but it needs some like sprucing up and spring cleaning. So we're going to plant some gardens and maybe encourage our neighbors to do the same. And then come summertime, make some salads, have like a salad contest or something, share herbs on people's garden or front steps. So just trying to do something with my kids to be
Connected. Yeah.
also like to the point of like food insecurities. This is something that kind of can teach us how to survive in the next time, if God forbid this happens. We don't need to be hoarding toilet paper and fresh produce. I'm having a hard time getting in my house, so we can just be our own source.
Well, thanks for sharing, Stacy. I think it's also, one of the things in the brief about the neighborhood is the green spaces and the beauty of neighborhoods. So this idea of focusing on gardening is one that is, you could keep social distances and you feel like you're productive. Mm-hmm. So thank you for sharing. And I think Molly would like to add something. Here we go. Unmute. Okay, here we go, Molly, you have the floor.
Good. Stacy, I loved some of those ideas, and I forgot that my son came up with an idea that we are going to once the weather turns a little nicer in Chicago, we're still a little cool here, he is going to pass out flyers on our block, and we have an outdoor movie theater. And we are going to set up a movie screen in the middle of the street, and everyone can bring a chair and sit 6 feet apart. And this will be another opportunity for maybe some people who are more housebound to come outside and have a movie with us. The other thing that we challenged our family to do, and maybe this would be a good neighborhood challenge for kids with schools, is we each give each other a talent that we have to learn at home while we're stuck here. I have a son who's going to learn to juggle. I have another son who's going to learn to play the guitar. And then we are going to have a talent show when we all are sprung from our homes and share it with family and friends. And it might be another great opportunity for people to come together as a community and share their talents, and also get back to normal with a social gathering when we are released from kind of social distancing. So it's another fun idea to keep people occupied and build community.
Great. Well, that's a fun idea. I'll have to convince kids to do that. So, well, thank you for sharing, Molly. And I'm going to mute you again. And I'd like, is there anyone else who would like to raise their hand? Maybe Judy, if you could give people the instructions again to raise their hands. And I'm wondering if I could call on Lindrea Reynolds, who I know is on this call, perhaps to share what's happening in her neighborhood in Chicago. Just trying to, I'm having trouble unmuting, so I'm sorry here. Oh, here.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hi. And so I'm actually out in the south suburbs, and my husband and I, we were actually just talking about wanted to check on some of our neighbors. We know that we actually have right next door to us is a senior home. So they've converted their home into a senior home. And so we've noticed that there has been little traffic. And we also have a neighbor across the street who recently lost his wife. So we know that he's alone. And so we were actually talking about how we actually kind of watch him from a distance. We've talked to him a few times. And we've noticed that the nurse, we haven't seen his nurse over there in a while. And so we were actually talking about how we need to go across the street and check on him this week. The other thing is, even beyond our neighborhood, I think, taking back to what Sylvie said about small businesses as well, and when everyone is talking about small businesses, a lot of my friends have small businesses, and I have friends who are restaurant owners, and they also own event spaces. And because so many conferences and summits and other events, even if it's just 50 people, have been shut down, we've been working together to kind of create these virtual summits and conferences so that people can continue to learn and can continue to innovate from home. And so I actually have a call with some friends this evening who have background, who do a lot of work in social media or business development or branding, so that we can just make sure we're helping to support small businesses who still need to continue to innovate and run their businesses, and we can still offer support, even if we're offering some type of online conference or summit, to make sure that they're getting the resources that they need to make sure that their businesses continue to thrive. Some of my favorite businesses have been started from home. And so we know people who actually may be able to use this time to continue to just innovate and be creative, to start something from home and be able to just actually do something they never thought about, because maybe because they didn't have the time. So how do you best utilize the time that you have at home if you have an idea that you want to just make that idea come into fruition and create impact? So how do you best utilize your time at home if you want to start this small business or just really launch this idea? So on our end, from home, my husband and I are really thinking about taking care of the people in the neighborhood, but on the business side, really making sure we're offering resources and tools for small businesses and people who have ideas to start businesses from home.
Great. Well, thanks for sharing, Lindrea. I'm going to leave the floor to Kathleen Ocham. Kathleen, can you, are you? Oh, wait, no, you're still not. Okay, there you go, Kathleen.
Okay, can you hear me? Yes, I can see myself. I too live in the city, and having grown up in the suburbs, but now living in the city, I think it just feels a little bit different than specifically really being in a tight neighborhood. We live in the South Loop. We moved here a couple months ago. One of the things I've noticed in the little development which we live in, we're renting a townhouse here, is it's gated and there's a middle courtyard. And whereas before we used to hear the kids play periodically, now we're hearing, the parents are sending their kids around and they're, riding their bikes or, scooters or whatever. And they're out playing a little bit more than I think that children, I don't have kids, but I have dogs, used to. They would be more inside, and now, we're seeing them more outside and playing. So I think that's kind of interesting. I'm not really watching them to see that they have a social distance, but I mean, that's something I remember from growing up. I mean, nobody had, devices like we're talking on now. You wanted to see your friend Sue, you went across the block, you rapped on her door, and you're like, hey, let's go out and play. And so I think you're, seeing some of that now. In the neighborhood, people continue to walk the dogs, and we get, social interaction that way. One of the things I wanted to represent, and it's for those people we were just talking about, entrepreneurs, and Sylvie, I know you and your husband are an entrepreneur also. One of the businesses I represent is very into corporate culture. And so what they're trying to do right now is think of ways to support the stylists that represent this business. It's called Peach. And a lot of this is led from our CEO, because she is really into, corporate culture and being a strong supportive community for women. And many of the women that represent this company are fitness instructors themselves. So here they are, supposed to be in a gym, somebody coming to their class. What the company has done is a specific shout out on our Facebook page saying, hey, are you a fitness instructor? What we're going to do is post, online all these different classes that are available. And so now somebody could probably teach it like in their office, like I'm sitting in my office right now, and beam it up to people. And maybe there is some way that they can still charge for it if they really need to. But that was one way in which they're supporting the community of people that, represent and work for their company. And also another thing that they're going to do next week is for all customers. I can't believe this. The home office people are going to kind of create this like virtual fashion show, so people have something to, I know it's kind of funny. I see one person laughing. So the home office staff is going to be acting as mom. I don't know how this is going to come off, but just that they've done this and really tried to think out of the box, I think is fantastic. But then again, this is a company that I rep that really has a strong corporate culture. So they're working really hard to be, innovative and think out of the box. Gosh, just the other night, my husband and I had cocktail night via Zoom with one of our friends that we were going to get together with. And he hosted a meeting like you have here. Doug and I sat there, with my laptop like I am right now. And, we all just kind of sat there and caught up for 45 minutes. Just, we could have been in a restaurant or a bar, but we didn't have that opportunity. So we just sort of did it.
Well, thanks for sharing. So thanks for sharing. It's interesting how many of you bring up the entrepreneurial and entrepreneurship possibilities. So I'd like to invite Vasavi Shaka to speak. I'm going to, Vasavi, you have the floor.
Hi, Sylvie. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. I'm glad we are using this brief, which we covered in December, I think, right, Darlene? Anyway, so we discussed in length about this brief in our last policy circle meeting, and I'm really glad that is, we know the importance of connecting to the community. So there are a couple of things. I firsthand experienced the panic because I just came back from India 15 days ago, and I self-quarantined all these 15 days. And going through the airport, it was like walking out of a science fiction movie, because we are all wearing masks and we could not see each other's faces, all those kind of things. Anyway, I understand, and being home for last 15 days, me as a person, I'm a social, very social person. I cannot live without people and all that around me. And coming back from India, around being around the family of a big family, it is very, very difficult. Anyway, so what are we doing with this? There are a couple of things. This is like we are living in a very, very fast moving society, and it's like a silver lining on the cloud kind of thing. This time we can use it to calm down and introspect our lives a little bit, because it's forcing us to go inside, because we cannot go outside. So that's the meditation and all these kind of things. And also bonding with the family. If you have your children not going to school and your husband and wife and all these kind of things, you can just try to bond again and strengthen the relationship if it is possible. What we are doing as a community, other than that, in our Indo-American community, we have created a task force to address all the issues about the coronavirus issues, especially to help the senior citizens. And we have 10 or 12 people who are on the call. They have given the phone numbers to these people so they can call them anytime. The doctors or others who can carry the chores for them, for example, to get the milk or any groceries for the medicines for the elderly community members. So this is what's happening in Naperville right now.
Yes, sharing the resources to sharing the resources for either healthcare or also for
yes,
for health.
yeah.
Well, thanks
And,
for sharing. Vasavi, I'd like to, we're going to be wrapping up soon. I'd like to.
One more thing I just wanted to say. My son lives in Seattle. Actually, that's the area which is affected very badly, and he teaches there, and he was part of AmeriCorps, and now he's teaching in Seattle public schools. So what they are doing is, since the schools are closed, they invented an online teaching system, and he has been teaching online, and they are finding tricks and methods to more effectively teach online to engage the kids who are at home. So I just wanted to share that with you as well. He's only 25, and the younger generation also reacting proactively to the situation to help the community. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for sharing. So I'm going to lower the hand. I'm going to ask Naja Masaccio, who is also a circle leader. So is Vasafi, actually, so thank you. Thanks, Naja. You have the floor. You want to share?
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Okay. And I'm sorry if you guys covered this at the beginning. I missed the first few minutes of the meeting, but I just wanted to mention the role of school in creating a community. I've been really impressed with how our local school district has helped our kids to continue to feel connected and also to not feel as anxious or worried about what's going on. I have kids in 3rd grade, 4th grade, and 6th grade, and my children have had video messages posted during their e-learning where they can see their teachers at home with their kids saying a good morning message. They also mimic their classroom discussions by allowing the kids to post answers to a question and read all the other kids' answers as well. My own kids have, actually one of my sons will have like a FaceTime open the entire time he's at school. So he's talking with his friend. And I think that's been so helpful for him because he still feels like he's connected with his classmates. My teachers have done read alouds so they can listen to their teachers reading a book. I am just so impressed by how they've tried to instill a feeling of community within the kids. And the other thing too, I think that they've done a good job with is an attitude of, this isn't going to be just like regular school. We are just going to try to create some sort of structured environment for some part during the day, and not trying to mimic what had been going on because that's impossible. Hopefully, instead, we can have some time to relax with our kids. I know a lot of parents are working, and so we can't be teachers to our own children for 6 hours a day. And that maybe this is going to allow us some time to actually have some kid-led activities where they can tell us what they want to learn about in a more relaxed setting, and that could actually be even a more authentic education for them as opposed to sitting at home doing busy work all day long, which needs to be supervised and assisted by a parent who might not be available.
Great. Well, thanks for sharing the how the school is doing actually quite well in turning around and providing a good experience on e-learning. It is an opportunity to learn a lot. So I'm going to take like 2 more. We're going to have to wrap this up. I think I'm going to mute you, and then Stacy Blakely. I don't know if Stacy, are you on? I was going to ask. Stacy, are you on? Are you able to speak? So I couldn't. No, I think Stacy is off the phone. Stacy Worley, I'll unmute you. Stacy, do you want to go? Stacy Worley. Okay. Well, I think we're just having a bit. I think Stacy Blake emailed me that there's one thing about that we could do is about helping the healthcare workers who are on the front line. I mean, some of the ER nurses and doctors are working extra hours and will be and they might need some support. I know I've seen several people bringing food to healthcare workers, so that's another possibility, and even helping them to buy groceries or offer to babysit their kids as they're working extended shifts. So I'd like to kind of wrap this up, and thank you so much for everyone for participating. We'll work on a summary, a recap of this conversation, perhaps an op-ed. And I think one thing that we did not cover here, and this is something that I would encourage all of you to engage with your representatives, is around what is going to be the return to normalcy and what are going to be the measures that we will take to say, okay, well, let's go back to normal life where business can actually run and people can earn a living. So I would encourage you to engage in conversations on that, and also even propose that and ask those questions to your state representative and your representative in Congress. So we would love to hear more of and feature some of your stories. And so I invite you to either contact Mary via communications at thepolicycircle.org. Or you can also post stories or messages on our Facebook page, and we'd love to be able to relay that. And I think it's by sharing what each of us are doing that we could find, like, okay, as a family, what are we going to do? What will we be doing? So thank you again. And I know this is unprecedented times for us, and the Policy Circle is about informing you, inspiring you, and developing civic leaders. So I invite you to continue to grow and lean on your Policy Circle, and also consider supporting the organization, as we are a nonprofit organization as well. So I look forward to hearing from all of you, and thank you so much for participating, and we'll be sharing also your insights with Barbara Stewart, who had to leave the call. So thank you. Judy, do you have last word?
Yes, ladies, thank you for joining us. And this was our first attempt at a Zoom call this big, and I think it went off pretty good. And thank you for being patient with the new technology. If you want to use Zoom for your own personal meetings, I'm happy to help you, walk you through how to use the program and the technology, especially as we need to keep away from each other. So I'm here to assist you in that, and get to meeting and reading those briefs and educating yourselves. And have a great day, ladies. Bye. Is that it?
Bye. Thank you. Thank you
Bye,
all.
everybody.